Poor farm girl gave her last sandwich to a homeless man. He was a billionaire. Before we begin the story, please leave a comment letting us know where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. Ethan Blake was only 35 years old, but he was already one of the wealthiest men in the country. He owned hotels in 5 states, a chain of luxury restaurants, and even a private investment firm. His mansion in Beverly Hills had 10 bedrooms, a glass elevator, a private movie theater, and a rooftop infinity pool. From the outside, his life looked like a dream. But inside, Ethan felt completely empty. He stood alone by the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse, staring at the LA skyline as the sun dipped behind the hills. Everything was quiet. Too quiet. No kids running through the halls. No wife calling his name. Just silence and the faint hum of central air. He'd dated plenty of women, models, influencers, even a few actresses. But they all had one thing in common. They wanted his money. Some of them didn't even hide it. "If I agree to date you," one had said, "I expect a car and my rent paid." Another told him flat out, "You're hot, Ethan." But let's be real. I'm in it for the lifestyle. He felt like a human ATM, used, unloved, alone. One evening, as he sat at the dining table with untouched steak and wine in front of him, he turned to his longtime friend and personal assistant, Ben. "I'm tired, Ben," Ethan said softly. "Tired of fake smiles, tired of people pretending to care. I don't want someone who loves Ethan Blake, the billionaire. I want someone who just loves me." Ben gave him a long look. "You're asking for something rare. People see your bank account before your heart." Ethan leaned back in his chair and stared at the ceiling. Then he sat up, eyes lit with a strange fire. "What if I disappear for a while?" he asked. Ben blinked. "Disappear? I mean, what if I left all of this behind? No money, no staff, no phones. Just me, living like a regular guy, or even a homeless man." Ben nearly choked on his drink. "You want to pretend to be homeless? On purpose?" "I need to know," Ethan said firmly. "I need to know if love is even real when money isn't involved." Ben shook his head. "Man, this is crazy." "I know," Ethan smiled, "but it's the only way." That night, Ethan packed a small gym bag with some old jeans, a worn-out hoodie, and a thin blanket. He left behind his watches, credit cards, phone, and even his wedding-level shoes. Instead, he put on an old pair of sandals and rubbed dirt on his face and arms. Before stepping out the door, he paused and looked back at his luxurious home. "Goodbye, old life," he whispered. "I hope I come back with something real." The next morning, Ethan caught a Greyhound bus out of Los Angeles. He rode for hours until he reached a small, dusty farming town in Georgia. The town looked like it hadn't changed since the 90s. Quiet streets, peeling paint, tired faces. He walked until his feet blistered, then settled behind a diner near a gas station. He placed a rusted tin cup on the ground and sat with his back to the wall. At first, people stared. Some sneered. Others looked right through him. A group of teens laughed as they walked by, one of them shouting, "Get a job, loser!" Ethan said nothing. He kept his head down. That night, he found shelter behind an abandoned shed near the railroad tracks. The ground was cold, and the mosquitoes were relentless. His stomach growled so loud it kept him awake. By day 4, he was weak. His lips were cracked. His hands trembled. He hadn't eaten anything except a half-eaten sandwich someone threw in the trash. He sat outside a convenience store, legs shaking, eyes barely open. His tin cup sat in front of him, empty. Then he heard it. "Hey, are you okay?" The voice was soft, kind. He looked up slowly. A young woman stood in front of him. She was maybe 20, with sun-kissed skin and curly brown hair pulled into a loose ponytail. Her jeans were dusty, her t-shirt faded, but her eyes, those big green eyes, were filled with concern. "You look starving," she said gently. "Have you eaten anything today?" Ethan shook his head. The girl bit her lip and looked into her small canvas purse. "I don't have money right now, but I have a sandwich I packed this morning. It's turkey and cheese. You can have it." Before he could say a word, she pulled it out, wrapped in a paper towel, and placed it gently into his hands. "Eat slowly, okay?" "Thank you," Ethan said hoarsely. "I'm Lila," she smiled. "I'm Chris," he lied. "Okay, Chris. I'll check on you again tomorrow." And just like that, she walked off into the sunset, leaving Ethan holding the warmest thing he'd touched in days. Not the sandwich, but her kindness. He stared at the food, then at the road she walked down. A single tear slid down his cheek. He didn't know who she really was, but something inside him whispered, she might be the one. Lila Carter lived in a run-down farmhouse just outside the main road. The paint on the porch had long since peeled off, and the old screen door creaked every time it opened. She shared the house with her mother Angela, her stepmother Vanessa, her father Martin, and her stepsister Brittany. It was a house divided. Angela, Lila's real mother, was quiet, kind, and hard-working. She cooked for everyone, cleaned up after them, and never raised her voice, even when she was clearly disrespected. Vanessa, the stepmother, acted like she owned everything. She called Angela names like Old Country Mouse and made sure Martin spent all his money on her and Brittany. Brittany, the stepsister, was everything Lila wasn't. Loud, flashy, and mean. She had long acrylic nails, fake eyelashes, and dreams of becoming an Instagram model. She teased Lila daily for wearing thrift clothes and helping their mother in the garden. But Lila didn't care. She believed kindness mattered, even when it wasn't popular. That evening, after giving her sandwich to the homeless man named Chris, she couldn't get his face out of her mind. His eyes, the way his hands trembled. She knew he wasn't lying. That man was starving. She waited until nightfall, then quietly slipped into the small kitchen where Angela was chopping potatoes. "Mom," she whispered. Angela turned. "You're home late. Where were you?" "I met someone," Lila said, glancing toward the window. "He's homeless. He's staying near the gas station by the tracks." Angela raised an eyebrow. "You gave him food?" "I gave him my lunch." He hadn't eaten in days. Angela sighed, wiped her hands on a towel, and turned to face her daughter. "Lila, there are many people who need help, but bringing a stranger into our lives is dangerous." "I'm not bringing him here," Lila said quickly. I want to ask if we can let him stay, just for a few nights, in the shed out back." "No one uses it." Angela looked at her long and hard. Then she glanced at the hallway to make sure no one was listening. "If your stepmother finds out, she won't." "I'll keep it secret. Please, Mom." He looked like he was dying. Angela took a deep breath. "Okay, but your father must not find out, and he can't be walking around the house. If anyone sees him, we're in trouble." Lila nodded fast. "I understand. I'll take care of everything." Angela reached into the cabinet and grabbed a small flashlight, a bar of soap, and an old towel. "Take these, and grab him something to eat, quietly." Lila smiled. "Thank you, Mom. You're the best." She packed some leftover beans and rice into a plastic container and wrapped a bottle of water in an old grocery bag. Then she snuck out through the back door, down the dirt path behind the house, and toward the shed. Ethan was still sitting in the same spot where she'd left him. His head was tilted back against the wall, his eyes closed. "Hey," she said softly. He opened his eyes slowly. "You're still here." She smiled. "I said I'd wait," he replied. "I talked to my mom," she said. "You can stay with us for a few nights. We have a shed out back. It's small, but it's dry and safe." Ethan blinked. "You're serious?" She nodded. "Come on, before someone sees." They walked quickly, heads low. The night air was cool, and the gravel crunched beneath their feet. When they reached the backyard, Lila opened the door to the shed. Inside was an old folding cot, a broken chair, and stacks of empty paint cans. "It's not much," she whispered, "but I'll clean it up tomorrow." "You'll be safe here." Ethan stepped inside. The air smelled of dust and oil, but he didn't care. It was better than the street. 1,000 times better. She handed him the bag of food, the soap, and the towel. "There's a water hose behind the barn. You can wash up when no one's around." He looked at her for a long moment. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to," she said. "Just stay quiet. And don't let Brittany see you. She's like a cat, always watching." Ethan gave a tired smile. "Got it." Lila turned to leave, but paused. "Good night, Chris." "Good night, Lila." As she disappeared back into the shadows, Ethan sat on the cot, opened the food, and took a slow bite. He hadn't felt this kind of peace in years. That night, he slept on a thin mattress with no blanket under a leaking roof, and yet, it was the best sleep he'd had in his life. For the next few days, Ethan lived quietly in the shed behind the Carter farmhouse. Each morning, just before sunrise, Lila would tiptoe out with a plate of food, grits, scrambled eggs, or leftover stew. Sometimes she brought a fresh towel, sometimes a bottle of cold water wrapped in newspaper. And always, she brought a smile. Ethan stayed hidden, just like she asked. During the day, he read a tattered Bible Angela had left behind and fixed the broken hinge on the shed door using an old spoon and wire. It wasn't much, but it made him feel useful. Angela never said much when she brought extra soap or left bread near the door. But each time she looked at him, her eyes said, "I see you. I believe in you." It was the first time Ethan had felt like a human being in weeks. But peace never lasts long in a house full of secrets. Inside the Carter home, Brittany, Lila's stepsister, had started watching her like a hawk. She noticed the quiet trips outside, the way Lila would sneak food out before anyone else was awake, the whispered conversations with her mother. One night, as Brittany applied mascara in the hallway mirror, she spotted Lila slipping out the back door holding a lunch plate wrapped in foil. She narrowed her eyes. "What are you up to, little saint?" The next morning, Brittany rushed into her mother's bedroom. "Mom," she whispered urgently. "Lila's hiding something. I think she's sneaking around with a guy." Vanessa sat up straight. "A guy? In this house? I've seen her taking food outside every day, then coming back smiling like some rom-com character." Vanessa's face twisted. "That sneaky little farm rat." "We'll catch her." "No," Brittany smirked. "Let me handle it. I want to see this loser for myself." That night, as Lila brought Ethan some leftover cornbread and beans, she didn't notice Brittany silently following her in the dark. Ethan had just finished eating when there was a soft knock at the shed door. "Lila?" he asked. "Yeah, it's me," came the reply, but the voice was off. He cracked open the door and froze. Standing there was Brittany, arms crossed, wearing a tank top and yoga pants, her lips curled into a wicked grin. "Well, well, well," she said. "You are real." Ethan took a step back. "Who are you?" "I'm the girl who's about to decide your future," she smirked, walking into the shed and locking the door behind her. "What do you want?" She stepped closer, eyes glinting. "You're kind of cute. Not my type, but cute. And you smell way too clean to be a real hobo. So here's the deal." "I'm not interested," Ethan said flatly. "You haven't even heard the deal," she purred. "If you sleep with me, just once, I'll keep your little secret. Otherwise," she glanced at the house, "I scream, and Daddy comes running with a shotgun." Ethan's jaw clenched. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious," she whispered, placing a hand on his chest. "Come on, no one ever has to know." He stepped back, furious. "You're disgusting." "I'd rather sleep on hot coals." Brittany's face twisted. "What did you say?" "You're cheap and desperate." "You need help." The slap didn't come, but the scream did. "Dad! Dad! There's a stranger in the shed. He tried to rape me." Chaos exploded. Within seconds, the backyard lights flipped on. The screen door slammed open. Martin Carter came barreling down the steps in his pajama pants, wielding a baseball bat. Vanessa followed, yelling at the top of her lungs. "Where is he? Where's the rapist?" "He's in there," Brittany cried, tears running down her face. "He tried to touch me." Ethan stood frozen as Martin yanked open the door and swung the bat. Instinct kicked in. Ethan raised his arms and caught the blow, falling backward. "Stop!" Lila screamed, running into the yard barefoot. Angela followed, shouting, "Martin, wait!" "He didn't do anything." "You lied to me?" Martin roared. "You brought a man into my house like a snake? I'll kill him." "He's not what you think," Lila cried, standing in front of Ethan. "He assaulted my daughter," Vanessa screamed, pretending to cry. "She's lying," Ethan shouted. "She tried to blackmail me into sleeping with her." "Liar!" Brittany screamed back. "You're just mad I said no." Neighbors began gathering outside the fence, phones recording, flashlights blinking. Martin pointed at Ethan. "You have 5 minutes to get off my property. If I ever see you near my house again, I'll call the cops." Ethan stood, bruised and breathing hard. But before he could speak, Lila stepped in front of him. "If he leaves, I leave too." Everyone went quiet. "What did you say?" Martin growled. "You heard me," she said, voice trembling but strong. "If he's not welcome here, then neither am I. I'm done living under your roof of fear and favoritism." Angela stepped forward. "Me too. I'm tired of being your servant while you spoil your second wife and daughter." Vanessa hissed. "Then go. Take your beggar and your useless daughter and get out." Martin pointed toward the road. "You'll regret this." Ethan looked at Lila and whispered, "You don't have to do this." She took his hand. "Yes, I do." They walked away together, Lila, Angela, and the man everyone thought was a nobody. But they had no idea. He was everything. The night was heavy with silence as Lila, Angela, and Ethan walked away from the only place they had ever called home. No one spoke. Lila's eyes were swollen from crying. Angela held her daughter's hand tight while balancing a grocery bag filled with clothes and a cooking pot. Ethan walked beside them, carrying 2 duffel bags and a folded blanket. They walked for nearly 30 minutes until they reached a narrow gravel road on the edge of town. There, behind a broken wooden fence and tall wild grass, stood an old cabin. "This used to be my grandfather's place," Angela said, stopping in front of the weathered door. "No one's lived here in years." Lila looked around. The windows were dusty. The porch steps leaned to one side. The mailbox was gone. But the house was still standing. Ethan set the bags down and looked at them both. "Are you sure about this?" Angela gave a sad smile. "I've lived under that man's shadow long enough. I may be poor, but at least here, I'm free." She pulled out a spare key from a nail hidden beneath the porch. Inside, the air was stale, but the space was solid. The living room had 2 chairs, an old wooden table, and a faded couch covered in plastic. Dust floated through the sunlight as Lila opened the small window. "This is home," she whispered. Ethan looked around. No chandeliers, no smart TVs, no polished marble floors. But for the first time in years, something inside him felt calm. They got to work immediately. Lila swept the floors. Angela boiled water on the gas stove. Ethan patched up a broken window using cardboard and duct tape. That night, they sat on the living room floor, eating rice and beans from paper bowls. It wasn't a feast, but it tasted better than anything Ethan had ever eaten on gold-plated dishes. In the days that followed, their little cabin became a home. Angela started selling fresh vegetables at the Saturday market in town. She grew tomatoes and cucumbers in the backyard, just like her grandmother once taught her. Lila helped her mother, and also took on laundry jobs for neighbors. She hung wet clothes on the line every morning, humming softly to herself. Ethan, still going by Chris, offered to fix people's broken fences, mow overgrown yards, and haul water buckets. Word spread quickly. The quiet handyman near the woods was strong, polite, and worked harder than anyone else. They had no car, no internet, no luxuries. But they had laughter, and peace, and love. One evening, Ethan sat on the porch with Lila. The sky was painted in soft orange and pink as the sun dipped below the trees. Crickets chirped. A warm breeze brushed across their faces. "You didn't have to leave," Ethan said quietly. "You had a roof, a room, a bed." Lila looked at him. It wasn't a home. Not without respect. Not without truth. He nodded, then hesitated. "There's something I should tell you." She waited. He opened his mouth, then closed it. "Not yet," he said. "Just know this. One day, when I leave, it's not because I don't love you. It's because I want to become the man you deserve." Lila frowned. "You're already that man." "No," he said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Not yet. But I will be." She looked into his eyes. "Promise me you'll come back." "I swear," he whispered. "Even if it takes a year." "I'll come back, and when I do, I'll ask you something very important." Lila's eyes glistened. "Then I'll wait." "For as long as it takes." They sat in silence, side by side, their hands intertwined under the fading sky. The next morning, Ethan packed his things. He left behind the blanket, the extra food, and half the money he had quietly saved. Angela hugged him at the front gate. "Wherever you go, may God protect you." "Thank you for giving me a second chance at life," he said. Then he turned to Lila. She didn't say a word, just pulled him into a long, tight hug. "I'll be back," Ethan whispered in her ear. She nodded against his shoulder. As he walked down the dusty path, Lila stood barefoot at the edge of the porch, her arms crossed, her heart pounding. She watched until he disappeared behind the trees. Then she whispered to the wind, "Please come back to me." That night, Lila sat beside her mother on the couch. "Do you think he'll forget me?" she asked softly. Angela placed her hand over her daughter's. "No, baby. You don't forget people who save you." And deep in her heart, Lila knew one thing. She didn't just give her last sandwich to a homeless man. She gave it to her future. 2 months passed. The little cabin on the edge of town became a place of healing. Angela's garden was now full of ripe tomatoes and bell peppers. Lila washed clothes for the neighbors and saved every dollar in a cookie tin under her bed. But each night, when the house grew quiet and the moon lit the walls, she stared at the empty chair beside the porch and whispered, "Where are you, Chris?" Meanwhile, Ethan had returned to Atlanta, but not as the billionaire everyone once knew. He kept his identity hidden while checking into his own company, posing as a new staff recruit to see how his businesses really ran. He cleaned offices. He worked in the mailroom. He delivered coffee to his own executive assistants, and he saw the truth. Some managers were corrupt. Some employees were lazy, and many only smiled when they thought he was rich. He quietly fired the worst and promoted the ones who worked hard and never asked for anything. Then one evening, Ethan drove to his father's estate on the outskirts of the city. The lights were still on, the yard perfectly trimmed. Everything looked exactly the same. "Mr. Blake is in his study," the butler said. When his father looked up and saw him, his eyes welled with tears. "Son," he whispered, standing up. They hugged without a word. Later that night, over glasses of whiskey, Ethan told him everything. How he had vanished. How he lived like a beggar. How a farm girl gave him her only meal and offered shelter without asking for a name. His father sat in silence for a long time. "Then she's the one," he finally said. "Let's go meet her." The next morning, a black Escalade rolled down the narrow road leading to the old cabin. Lila was hanging laundry on the clothesline when she saw the vehicle approaching. She dropped the sheet in her hands. The door opened, and there he was, but not in rags. Ethan stepped out wearing a tailored navy suit, leather shoes polished to a shine, and behind him, his father, a tall man in his 60s with silver hair and a warm smile. Angela stepped out of the house and froze. Lila's mouth opened slightly, unable to speak. "Chris?" she whispered. Ethan smiled gently. "That's not really my name." He walked up to her slowly, every step filled with emotion. "My name is Ethan Blake," he said. "I'm a businessman. I own several companies. And I came here pretending to be poor, because I was tired of being loved for my money." Lila stared at him, heart pounding. "You lied to me?" "I hid the truth," he said, "but not my feelings. Everything I felt, everything I said, was real." Angela placed a hand over her heart, stunned. "I'm sorry for the secrets," Ethan continued, "but you gave me something I never had before, unconditional kindness. You treated me like a human when the whole world saw me as a wallet." His father stepped forward. "And I'm here to thank you both for saving my son's soul." Lila's lips trembled. "You really came back?" "I promised I would," he said. He pulled out a small velvet box from his pocket and dropped to one knee. Angela gasped. "Lila Carter," Ethan said, his voice steady. "You gave me a sandwich, but you ended up feeding my heart. Will you marry me?" Tears ran down Lila's cheeks. She nodded quickly. "Yes," she whispered. 100 times yes. Angela clapped her hands to her face, crying joyful tears. Ethan stood and hugged Lila tightly, his own eyes wet. Then he whispered, "But there's one more person we need to talk to." Later that afternoon, Ethan, Lila, Angela, and Mr. Blake drove to the town to meet Martin, Lila's father. They found him sitting on a bench outside the hardware store, looking worn, older, and bitter. He blinked when he saw them approach. "Lila," he said, "why are you with this fancy man?" Ethan stepped forward. "Sir, I've come to ask for your daughter's hand in marriage." Martin stood up, suspicious. "And who exactly are you?" "My name is Ethan Blake," he said. "You may have heard of me." Martin's face changed instantly. "Blake. Blake Industries?" "Yes," Ethan replied. Martin looked shaken. "So, you're rich?" "I am," Ethan said. "But I met your daughter when I had nothing. She didn't love me for my wealth. She fed me when she had barely enough for herself." Martin glanced at Angela, who looked calm and proud. "I misjudged you," he mumbled. Angela stepped forward. "It's too late for apologies." "But it's not too late to do one thing right." Martin looked at Lila. "If this is what you want." Lila nodded slowly. "It is." "Then I give my blessing," Martin said, shoulders sinking. Back at the cabin that night, under the stars, Ethan held Lila's hand. Angela sat nearby, humming softly as the wind passed through the trees. From sleeping behind dumpsters to proposing in front of a garden, Ethan had finally found what money could never buy. A real home. The days after the proposal were filled with joy. Ethan bought Angela a new farmhouse nearby with 3 bedrooms, a sunny porch, and a garden plot even larger than her old one. He moved Lila and her mother in within a week, and hired local builders to restore the place, while keeping its country charm. Lila was enrolled in nursing school, like she'd always dreamed. Angela started her own vegetable business with new equipment and hired help. And Ethan. He worked remotely from the farmhouse some days, smiling more than he had in years. It was peace. But far away, in a rundown motel on the edge of town, bitterness was brewing. Brittany and Vanessa had not forgotten. After Lila, Angela, and Ethan left the Carter house, the town whispered. Neighbors pointed. Customers stopped coming to Vanessa's salon. Brittany's modeling dreams crumbled overnight when photos leaked online of her screaming outside the farmhouse, accusing a man who turned out to be a billionaire. They became the town's joke. Trash chased out by a farm girl, someone wrote online. Vanessa sat on the motel bed, scrolling through pictures of Lila and Ethan's engagement party that had gone viral on local news. She tossed the phone against the wall. "She's living in my house, with my billionaire," she hissed. Brittany, painting her nails, smirked darkly. "We can still fix this." Vanessa turned sharply. "How?" "We visit Mama Rose." Vanessa froze. "The witch? She owes you." "You helped her daughter years ago, remember? She'll give us a charm. Something powerful." Vanessa's lips curled into a grin. "Let's destroy their happiness." Late that evening, under a blood-red sky, Vanessa and Brittany arrived at the edge of the swamp near Bayou Hollow, where few dared to visit. Inside a shack covered in vines and feathers, Mama Rose, an old Creole woman with silver dreadlocks and piercing eyes, stirred a black pot. "You want to curse the girl?" Mama Rose asked, her voice raspy. "She ruined our lives," Vanessa said. Mama Rose stared at her. "No one can ruin what you never deserved." "But you owe me," Vanessa pressed. "Remember the money I gave for your daughter's surgery?" Mama Rose sighed. I remember. One favor. She dipped her fingers into the pot and pulled out a small pouch made of red cloth and string. This charm will bring storms, not of weather, but of the heart. Give it to the girl or bury it where she sleeps. But beware, what you send out returns threefold. Vanessa snatched the charm. We'll take our chances. The next morning, Angela stepped outside with a basket of fresh cucumbers. The sun was shining. Birds chirped. It was a beautiful day. But as she walked past the porch swing, she noticed something odd in the dirt. A small red pouch covered in feathers and ash. She bent down, picked it up, and opened it. Inside was a black pebble and a thin paper that read, "She will forget. She will fade. She will break." Angela gasped. Lila came outside moments later and saw her mother's face. "What's wrong?" Angela handed her the pouch. "Don't touch it." Ethan stepped out of the front door and joined them. He looked at the pouch. Then at Lila. Then at Angela. Angela's hands trembled. "This is voodoo." Ethan's face hardened. Who would do this? Angela didn't need to guess. Vanessa. Lila held her mother's hand. "I'm not afraid." But that night, she began to feel strange. She couldn't sleep. Her dreams were filled with shadows. Vanessa's face laughing, Brittany's voice calling her a thief. And the next morning, she couldn't remember the date. She stared at Ethan for several seconds before whispering, "What's your name again?" Ethan's heart dropped. For the next 3 days, Lila's condition worsened. She forgot little things, what she ate, where her phone was, the names of flowers in her mother's garden. Angela cried in the kitchen, praying aloud. Ethan made calls, consulted doctors, but all tests came back clean. "It's spiritual," Angela said. "We need to fight fire with faith." She called an old pastor, Reverend Samuel, who had once helped her mother during a crisis years ago. That night the pastor came, holding a Bible and a jar of olive oil. He stood in the center of the house, hands lifted. "In the name of God, we rebuke every spirit of confusion, every lie, every trap sent to destroy this family." He anointed every doorway, every window, and finally Lila's forehead. She wept silently in her sleep. Ethan held her hand the entire time. Angela stood behind them, singing softly. By morning, the air in the house felt lighter. The red pouch? Burned. And Lila. She opened her eyes, blinked, and whispered with a smile, "Ethan." He burst into tears. Back in the swamp, Mama Rose's fire suddenly blew out. She gasped, eyes wide. Vanessa and Brittany looked up from the floor of her shack. "What happened?" Brittany asked. Mama Rose turned to them with a cold, shaking voice. "You tried to break a woman whose love came from truth." She pointed at the door. "Get out, before what you sent returns to you." A week passed. Lila was herself again, fully. Her memory returned. The shadows lifted. She could laugh without feeling hollow, and her eyes sparkled again when she looked at Ethan. Angela thanked God each morning with tears and songs, filling the house with the scent of praise and fried plantains. Even Reverend Samuel returned one evening, just to sit on the porch and drink sweet tea. "When love is real," he said, "even curses must bow." News of the billionaire and the country girl had spread across Georgia. Reporters tried to sneak onto the property. One photographer offered Angela $5,000 for a single photo of Lila in her wedding dress. She laughed and said, "You think love is for sale? Bless your heart." Ethan knew it was time to make everything official. He wanted the wedding to reflect their story, not the money. No ballrooms, no fancy yachts. Just family, community, faith. They planned a small outdoor ceremony at the farmhouse under a canopy of oak trees draped in white fabric. Lila wore a dress her mother had sewn by hand, detailed with lace and pearls from Angela's old wedding gown. Ethan wore a tailored beige suit, no tie, just a soft blue shirt, Lila's favorite color. Guests arrived in pickup trucks and Sunday dresses. There were hay bales for seats, mason jars filled with lemonade, and a live bluegrass band playing soft tunes as the sun began to set. Angela walked her daughter down the aisle with trembling hands, but a steady heart. Ethan stood waiting, eyes locked on Lila, who smiled through quiet tears. The vows were short, but powerful. "I came to you with nothing," Ethan said, voice thick with emotion, "but you gave me everything." "I didn't know who you were," Lila whispered, "but I saw your soul, and I never looked away." When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," Ethan didn't hesitate. The crowd erupted in cheers. Angela wiped her eyes. Reverend Samuel clapped from the front row. Love had won. After the ceremony, guests shared barbecue ribs and sweet cornbread. Children ran barefoot through the field. Neighbors brought gifts, fresh pies, jars of honey, and hand-carved spoons. Under the stars, Ethan and Lila danced slowly to an old love song while fireflies danced around them. As they swayed, Ethan leaned in close. "I bought you something," he whispered. Lila raised an eyebrow. "Oh, really?" "It's not jewelry," she laughed. "Then what is it?" He pulled a folded paper from his jacket pocket. It was an acceptance letter. "To nursing school?" she gasped. He nodded. "Paid in full. You start next fall." Her jaw dropped. "But I told you I'd wait until—" He placed a finger on her lips. "You waited for me. Now I want you to run toward your dreams." She hugged him tight. "You're spoiling me." "Good," he smiled. "Get used to it." Meanwhile, across town, Vanessa sat alone in a motel room. Brittany had moved to another state. The charm had backfired. Clients stopped coming to her salon. Her hair thinned. Her skin broke out. And no matter how many mirrors she looked into, she couldn't find herself. She'd lost everything. That night, as she scrolled through photos of Lila's wedding, a tear slipped down her cheek. She had mocked the girl who offered kindness. Now the girl lived in a mansion of love. And she lived with regret. Back at the farmhouse, Ethan and Lila stood on the porch watching the last guests drive away. Angela rocked slowly in a chair beside them, humming her mother's favorite hymn. "You ready for the next chapter?" Ethan asked. Lila leaned against him. "Only if you're in every page." He kissed the top of her head. "Always." They turned to go inside, but just before they stepped through the door, Lila looked up at the stars and whispered, "To think, all of this began with a sandwich." 1 year later. The farmhouse now had new flower beds and a small white fence. Angela ran a full-blown organic produce business with 2 helpers. Her grandma Angie's tomatoes were sold in local stores and farmers markets across 3 counties. Lila had finished her first semester in nursing school and passed every class with honors. And Ethan. He officially stepped down as CEO, but only after transferring part of the company shares to a foundation that supported rural education and young women in farming communities. They named it the Lila Hope Foundation. One cool morning, Ethan sat on the porch with a baby in his arms. A little girl with Lila's eyes. Angela stepped outside with another infant on her hip, a boy with Ethan's dimples. "Breakfast is ready," she called. Lila walked out with a third child, a boy with messy curls and the loudest laugh in Georgia. Triplets. Ethan chuckled. From a sandwich to a full house. Lila laughed. God has a sense of humor. Angela grinned. And a good heart. As the sun rose over the trees, the family sat down for breakfast on the porch of the house built on love. No lies, no masks, no gold plates. Just grace. And the girl who gave a sandwich got a legacy in return. Have you ever helped someone not knowing who they really were? Do you believe kindness always finds its way back? If you love the story, like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to turn on the bell so you never miss the next one. Thanks for watching. Stay blessed.